After 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, Julian Assange has now been arrested. They sent in the secret police into the embassy in London and basically extracted him and took him away. He was arrested for failure to surrender to the court in June of 2012, which is when he went into the Ecuadorian embassy. That's when he started to take refuge there. He was supposed to surrender to the court and be extradited to Sweden for a rape charge. He's also been charged by the U.S. Justice Department, or he's being accused, I'm not sure if he's been officially charged yet, with conspiring with Chelsea Manning to break into a classified government computer at the Pentagon. Make no mistake, Julian Assange is a hero, and this is an attack on journalists and whistleblowers everywhere. That's exactly what this is. Let us be clear that Julian Assange is not being arrested because he is a war criminal. He has been arrested and pursued because the United States government is a war criminal. So let's go over exactly what Julian Assange did and what led up to this. So Julian Assange, if you've just had no idea, is the founder of WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks is the online publication news organization where whistleblowers are able to leak information, including documents. And this is where Chelsea Manning and there's numerous leaks have happened through WikiLeaks. And information we would have otherwise not had, extremely critical information that really tells us what our government has been up to. And a lot of it is extremely sinister and disturbing. So let's go over exactly what Julian Assange has exposed to the American people and really to the world that we otherwise would have been oblivious to. The Iraq war logs is one of the biggest things that WikiLeaks actually exposed. It was the largest military document exposure. This revealed in these 300 and something thousand pages, they revealed the deaths of thousands, and I mean thousands, 150,000 Iraqi civilians from the Iraq war. Many of which were purposefully mislabeled as enemy casualties. There was about 15,000 casualties that the U.S. government just didn't even list, and that was exposed in these documents. Plus, the documents showed U.S. authorities' failure to investigate hundreds of reports of abuse, torture, rape, and even murder by Iraqi police and soldiers. An absolute failure of our military during this war. Absolute crimes against humanity, war crimes, despicable, non-heroic type stuff. So many of us, we keep wanting to think that the U.S. military is the heroes. Captain America, that's kind of how we envision it. And it couldn't be further from the truth when you read these logs. 150,000 civilian casualties in that war. That they purposefully said were enemies. Many of them, they said, oh, no, they're enemies. And no, it turns out that they were actually civilians. Also, the documents showed that the U.S. troops killed almost 700 civilians for coming too close to checkpoints, including pregnant women. They shot and killed pregnant women who came too close to checkpoints. These pregnant women were being transported to hospitals by Iraqi men, and they were shot dead by U.S. troops. That's our American government, everybody. Our military, everybody. These documents exposed what our military has really been up to. The documents described torture and abuse of Iraqi detainees, including electrocution and executions. They were able to leak video footage of civilians just being indiscriminately killed, including journalists. The documents, moving on, in WikiLeaks, they also leaked to the Tunisian people just how corrupted their government was, which actually sparked a Tunisian revolution. The Tunisian people had a pretty good idea that their government was already corrupted, but the WikiLeaks documents actually showed specifically what their government was up to. The corruption in the banking system, in lending, in confiscation of things that the government leaders wanted. If they wanted your boat, they would come and just take your boat and they would use it for themselves. And these documents showed that. And that sparked a revolution in Tunisia. That was something that those people deserved to know. And WikiLeaks made sure they knew it. WikiLeaks exposed an EU military plan to destroy boats transporting refugees and migrants trying to leave Libya, trying to escape Libya to come to Europe. The EU military had planned to destroy those boats, killing everybody on board. And WikiLeaks exposed that plan. Julian Assange is a hero. He exposed NSA's extensive spying on U.S. citizens and global leaders. We all know about this, how our government had been spying on us extensively. They were supposed to be spying on people around the world looking for terrorists, and instead they were spying on all of us. They also were spying on leaders around the world like Angela Merkel in Germany. This was exposed on WikiLeaks. Also, they exposed the CIA's spying and cyber warfare. WikiLeaks exposed the DNC for its bias against Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Clinton, which was an absolute attack on our democracy, an attack on our process. And now, after all of this, after everything Julian Assange has exposed about the government, it put him on the enemy list. He was considered an enemy of pretty much the Western world. And he had to escape and hole himself up in Ecuador, the Ecuadorian embassy in London, where he'd been for 7 years. He'd been holed up for 7 years. Could you imagine 7 years imprisoned, essentially, in the Ecuadorian embassy, trying to seek refuge away from actual prison because you know that the authorities are after you and they're going to make up whatever they possibly can in order to throw you in jail because they view you as a war criminal when in fact they are the war criminals. So Julian Assange, 7 years holed up in Ecuadorian embassy. And the new leader of Ecuador, the new president, decides that he's had enough of Julian Assange. He wants to get in the good graces of America, apparently in the Western world, and decides that he's going to revoke Julian Assange's asylum, which was called out by the former president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa. He tweeted out, "The greatest traitor in Ecuadorian and Latin American history, Lenin Moreno, allowed the British police to enter our embassy in London to arrest Assange. Moreno is a corrupt man, but what he has done is a crime that humanity will never forget." That is absolutely right. And the reason this is a crime against humanity is because this is a crime against whistleblowers and journalists who are seeking to expose the truth. And what they are trying to do is silence the truth. They are trying to tell you that if you dare cross us, we will come after you. You will have a miserable life. You'll have to be holed up in an embassy. And then eventually we're going to get you and we're going to put you in prison for God knows how long. That is what this message is. The fact that they'd been hunting him down and forcing him to live in the Ecuadorian embassy to begin with for 7 years, just like Edward Snowden is having to seek refuge in Russia right now. This is what the American government does to whistleblowers, to people who tell the truth. This is our government. This is our government. What are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we supporting this? Rafael Correa, again, the former president of Ecuador, also said in the video that he released, "This will never be forgotten by the whole of humanity. One of the most heinous acts, the fruit of civility, vileness, and vengeance." And that's exactly what this is. This is vengeance against Julian Assange for exposing the war crimes of our governments and the war crimes of the EU, the war crimes of the Western world. Correa added, "From now on and across the world, scoundrel and betrayal can be summarized in 2 words, Lenin Moreno." And where are all the American leaders speaking up about this? Where is everybody? Nobody's saying anything. Trump says, after citing Julian Assange and WikiLeaks over and over during the campaign, he now says, "I don't really know anything about WikiLeaks. I don't know nothing." All the other leaders are silent. Bernie Sanders, where are you? Where are you after WikiLeaks exposed the corruption of the DNC? Where are you? The only politician that I have seen actually speak up against this has been Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has been the only one to stand up and say something. She tweeted out, "The arrest of Julian Assange is meant to send a message to all Americans and journalists. Be quiet, behave, toe the line, or you will pay the price." Where is everybody else? Why aren't you speaking out against this? The ACLU issued an excellent statement saying this: any prosecution by the United States of Mr. Assange for WikiLeaks publishing operations would be unprecedented and unconstitutional and would open the door to criminal investigations of other news organizations. Moreover, prosecuting a foreign publisher for violating U.S. secrecy laws would set an especially dangerous precedent for U.S. journalists who routinely violate foreign secrecy laws to deliver information vital to the public's interests. The journalists that expose what, places like Russia or China or other countries around the world, the journalists that go and risk their lives and their jobs to expose this are now being told essentially by the Western world, by the British government, by the U.S. government, by many others in the Western world that they are not safe. This sets a precedent that these other countries, when they say, we want our people, we want those journalists, we want those U.S. journalists who've exposed our secrets, we want you to extradite them to our country. How are we going to say no to that when we demanded it? When we said, we want Julian Assange, give us Julian Assange. And when they hand him over, how are we ever going to then turn around and say to China, nope, sorry, we're not handing you over our U.S. journalists? This is a dangerous precedent for the United States. It's another attack on journalists. It's an attack specifically on whistleblowers. Now, whether or not you want to think Julian Assange is a journalist, I know some people think, oh, no, he's not a journalist. He was a hacker, right? People say, oh, he was a hacker. He was a whistleblower, first and foremost. He was a whistleblower. And some people say he was a traitor. He was not a traitor. He was a whistleblower. Julian Assange did not expose anything that put people's lives in danger. He did not expose operations that put military personnel at risk, that would have been to benefit some foreign nation. He was not working on behalf of a foreign nation, exposing us so that a foreign nation could infiltrate us or bomb us or know our locations or anything like that. That's what a traitor is. A traitor turns over their own people to an enemy. That is not what Julian Assange did. Julian Assange showed that our government and our military has been an enemy to others, an enemy to the American people. That's what Julian Assange exposed. He exposed that he didn't expose us to enemies. He exposed that we are the enemy. And instead, he was made a villain. He has been made an enemy. And now he's in custody. And where is everybody at? Where are all the voices? Where are all the politicians speaking out saying this is an injustice? Julian Assange is a hero. And what he exposed through his WikiLeaks organization throughout the years to the American public has been necessary and needed. How else would we have known any of this stuff? How else would we have found out? And it was because of an organization like WikiLeaks and a man like Julian Assange who was willing to risk everything, to be holed up in an embassy for 7 years, to now be kicked off to prison. How many of us would risk that? How many of us would actually, if we were put in his position, would risk our lives, would risk our comforts, would risk our routines to expose what the U.S. government has been doing and what the military has been doing and what the European governments have been doing? Julian Assange is a hero. Where are our politicians? Where are the other journalists? Everybody needs to speak up, because we can't allow this to happen.